It happened on Christmas Eve, back when I was 12 years old, during a time when my family still believed the holidays were something sacred. Every year, without fail, our house became the gathering place. Grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, everyone came to us. It was loud, chaotic, and exhausting, but it was tradition. That year felt no different at first. My mom was in the kitchen, cooking like she always did, moving around with the kind of stress that only comes from trying to make everything perfect for a large family. The smell of food filled the house, mixing with pine from the Christmas tree and whatever cheap candles my mom had lit earlier in the afternoon. My dad wasn't helping much. He'd caught a bad cold and had spent most of the day isolating himself, coughing and insisting he didn't want to get anyone sick. Since I was older now, my mom had me helping her instead of running around like a little kid. I was chopping vegetables, setting trays out, doing whatever she asked, even though I'd rather have been anywhere else. That changed when my uncle arrived with my two cousins. Chris and Valerie were the closest to me in age, and whenever they came over, everything else faded into the background. Chris walked in holding a PlayStation game case, like it was some kind of sacred object. The second I saw the cover, my brain shut off completely. We didn't even say hello to anyone properly. The three of us bolted upstairs to my room and threw the disc into the console. The familiar startup sound filled the room, and for a few minutes, Christmas dinner didn't exist anymore. Valerie sat on my bed watching us play, while Chris and I argued over turns. Of course, it didn't last. My mom yelled my name from downstairs, her voice sharp and irritated. I knew that tone well. It meant I wasn't getting out of this. We paused the game and dragged ourselves back downstairs, the excitement already slipping away. By the time we returned, most of the family had arrived. The house was packed. Coats were piled everywhere. Voices overlapped, and the table was being set in a hurry. Everyone seemed to be moving at once. About 30 minutes later, dinner was almost ready. Half of us were already sitting at the table when my mom suddenly swore under her breath. She called my name and told me to run down to the basement. She'd forgotten the stuffing. Our house didn't have a proper pantry, so my mom used the storage area behind the basement bar for dry food. I grabbed the flashlight from the kitchen drawer out of habit and headed down the basement stairs. The basement was unfinished, dimly lit, and always cold, no matter the season. The kind of place you never liked being alone in, but also never complained about because you didn't want to sound like a kid. I went behind the bar and started digging through shelves, annoyed and rushing. That's when I noticed something out of place. In the corner of the room, near the old sofas, there was a large shape covered by a blanket. At first, I didn't think much of it. My immediate assumption was that one of my cousins was trying to mess with me. It wouldn't have been the first time. The shape under the blanket looked human, too human. The outline of a head was clearly visible. I stood there quietly, waiting. If it was one of them, they were doing a really good job of staying still. I wondered how they were planning to scare me if they couldn't see me. I took a slow step closer, then another. That's when the basement lights shut off. At the same time, I heard the door at the top of the stairs slam shut. I shouted a curse, assuming it was Chris or Valerie pulling a prank. My heart was racing, but I was already annoyed more than scared. If they wanted to play games, fine. I'd play along. I decided I was going to scare them back. I moved slowly across the carpet, keeping my footsteps light. My hands were shaking as I reached the corner. I grabbed the blanket and ripped it away while screaming at the top of my lungs. No one screamed back. Instead, something grabbed me. A hand locked around my neck with so much force that the air left my lungs instantly. For half a second, I thought it was Chris messing around, but that illusion shattered almost immediately. This wasn't a kid. This grip was strong, controlled. I clawed at the arm around my throat, trying to breathe, trying to scream, but nothing came out. Panic flooded my body in a way I'd never experienced before. Then the basement door burst open and the lights flipped on. The man let go of me instantly. He was old, filthy, and smelled like rot and sweat. His clothes were torn, his beard matted, and his eyes were wild. He didn't say a word. He ran, not toward the stairs, but toward the back basement door that led directly outside. I collapsed onto the floor, gasping. My screams finally came out as half my family rushed downstairs. I could barely talk. I just pointed toward the open door, crying and shaking uncontrollably. Two of my uncles ran outside without hesitation. My mom was holding me, asking questions I couldn't answer. My entire body felt numb, like I was about to pass out. The police were called, and my uncles searched the neighborhood for nearly half an hour, but the man was gone. The officer later said it was likely a homeless squatter trying to escape the cold. That explanation didn't make it any easier to sleep at night, especially knowing his hands had been around my throat. My cousins admitted they'd turned off the lights as a joke. They hadn't known anyone was down there. That Christmas taught my family a lesson we never forgot. Lock every door. Every single one. It was Christmas Eve when this happened, and I was still young enough to believe that nights like that were supposed to feel safe. My mom had passed away when I was very little, so it had always just been my dad, my older brother, my younger sister, and me. We didn't have huge family gatherings or loud traditions. Our Christmases were quiet, predictable, and honestly comforting. That year, my dad had started seeing a woman named Lauren. She wasn't officially his girlfriend yet, but she stayed over some weekends and tried very hard to act like she belonged. She smiled a lot, laughed at my dad's jokes, and always brought gifts for us kids. I remember liking her at first, mostly because having another adult in the house made things feel more normal. On Christmas Eve, Lauren stayed the night. We spent the evening doing exactly what we always did. We ordered takeout, sat in the living room, and watched Christmas movies until my sister fell asleep on the couch. My brother pretended he wasn't interested, but he stayed anyway. Lauren sat close to my dad, her hand resting on his arm, smiling at the screen like everything was perfect. When the movie ended, my dad told us it was time for bed. My brother went upstairs, my sister was carried to her room, and I went to mine. But I didn't go to sleep. I was old enough to be suspicious of Santa by then. Every year, the presents appeared overnight, and every year, my dad was the only adult in the house. I wanted proof. I wanted to know the truth. So I waited. My room was on the lower level of the house, separated from the living room by a short set of stairs. From my doorway, I could hear almost everything that happened upstairs if the house was quiet enough. I lay in bed with my door cracked open, staring at the darkness and listening. Eventually, I heard footsteps. I got out of bed slowly and crept toward the stairs. The living room lights were off, but the Christmas tree was glowing softly, casting shadows across the walls. That's when I saw her. Lauren was kneeling by the tree. At first, I thought she was placing gifts, and I felt that familiar sting of disappointment. Another year of pretending. But something about the way she was moving felt wrong. She wasn't setting anything down carefully. She was picking gifts up. She shook one box slowly, holding it close to her ear. Then another. She opened a gift bag and pulled out something small, turning it over in her hands. I recognized it immediately. It was something meant for my sister. Lauren stared at it for a long moment before putting it back and looking around the room. My stomach tightened. She stood up and walked into the kitchen. I stayed frozen on the stairs, barely breathing. I watched her reach for the counter where my dad always left his wallet. She opened it without hesitation. She took out cash. Not just one bill. Several. She folded the money and slid it into the pocket of her pajama pants like she'd done it 100 times before. My heart was pounding so loudly I was sure she could hear it. Then she opened the medicine cabinet. I watched her take out one of my dad's prescription bottles. She turned it in her hands, read the label, and opened it. She sniffed it, then tilted the bottle like she was counting the pills. That's when she looked up, straight at me. Our eyes met, and for a split second, neither of us moved. Her expression changed instantly. The warmth disappeared. Her eyes went wide, then narrow. She shoved the bottle back into the cabinet and quietly closed the door. I ran. I didn't even try to be quiet. I bolted back to my room and dove under the covers, my heart racing, my body shaking. I squeezed my eyes shut and pretended to be asleep, like that could somehow protect me. I heard my door creak open. I felt the presence before I saw her. The air in the room felt heavier. I forced myself not to move. My breathing was shallow and shaky, but I kept my eyes closed. She stood there for a long time. Finally, I felt her hand press down on the edge of my mattress. She leaned close and whispered my name. My entire body went stiff. I slowly opened my eyes. She was standing over me. The only light came from the hallway, turning her into a dark silhouette. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. She told me she saw me watching her and said I must have misunderstood. She said she was just checking my dad's medication to make sure he was taking it correctly. Her voice was calm, but there was something underneath it, something angry. She wished me a Merry Christmas and left the room. I didn't sleep at all that night. The next morning, we opened presents like nothing had happened. I watched Lauren closely. She laughed, hugged my sister, and acted completely normal. My dad seemed happy, relaxed, unaware of anything being wrong. Then he'd check his wallet. He got angry fast. He demanded to know who took $60. My brother and sister both denied it immediately. My dad looked frustrated, confused. I looked at Lauren. She met my eyes for just a second and gave me a warning look that made my blood run cold. I stayed quiet at first. I didn't want to cause trouble. But as the day went on, my dad kept getting angrier, accusing us kids. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore. I told him everything. At first, he didn't believe me. But when I mentioned the medication, his expression changed. He asked questions I couldn't answer. That night, they argued behind closed doors. Loudly. Lauren didn't leave. I locked my bedroom door for the first time in my life. Around midnight, I heard someone outside my door. The doorknob turned slowly, once, twice. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. After a few seconds, it stopped. The next morning, Lauren was gone. My dad told us she wouldn't be coming back. He didn't explain much, and I didn't ask. I just knew one thing. If I hadn't been awake that night, I don't know what she would have done. And I don't think I want to know. Christmas night in 2021 is something I still replay in my head whenever the house is too quiet. It was the first Christmas in years that felt normal again, the kind where nothing bad was supposed to happen. I drove up to Vermont that afternoon to spend the holiday weekend with my family, something we rarely manage to do all together anymore. My parents lived in a large house tucked away from the road, surrounded by woods on 3 sides. It was peaceful, isolated, and beautiful during the winter. Snow covered everything, muffling sound and making the world feel frozen in place. Normally, that brought comfort. That night, it did the opposite. Our gathering was small. Just my parents, my older brother and his girlfriend, my aunt and uncle, and me. No kids running around. No loud music. No chaos. It was calm in a way that felt unfamiliar. We cooked dinner together, shared stories, and tried to make the most of being in the same place again. After dinner, we did what we always did growing up. We turned off the lights, lit the fireplace, and watched a Christmas movie together. That year, my dad insisted on watching Bad Santa, laughing louder than anyone else while the rest of us groaned. When the movie ended, we had dessert and played cards until everyone started yawning. By around 11, people began heading off to bed. My brother and his girlfriend took one of the guest rooms upstairs. My aunt and uncle took the other. I volunteered to sleep on the pull-out couch in the living room. I actually preferred it. I liked falling asleep near the tree, with the fireplace nearby and the house settling around me. I changed into sweatpants and turned the television on low while I scrolled through my phone. The room slowly grew darker as I turned off the lamps one by one. Eventually, only the glow from the Christmas tree remained, reflecting softly off the windows. When I felt myself drifting, I turned the TV off. The room became almost completely dark. The fire crackled weakly as it burned down to embers. I pulled the blanket up around my shoulders and closed my eyes. That's when I dreamed. In the dream, I was back at a different Christmas, years earlier, sitting at a crowded dinner table. Faces I recognized were there, along with people who shouldn't have been. Everything felt wrong, like the details didn't line up properly. Conversations faded into silence one by one until everyone at the table stopped talking. They all turned and stared at me. My aunt leaned forward and spoke in a flat, urgent voice. "There's someone in the house. Wake up." I jolted awake. My heart was racing before I even understood why. The living room felt different, heavier somehow. The ceiling seemed higher, the shadows deeper. I sat up slowly, listening. The fireplace was completely out now. The room was pitch black except for faint moonlight filtering through the windows. I told myself the dream had just shaken me, that I was being paranoid. Then I heard a creak. It came from the far end of the room, right where the kitchen met the living room. It wasn't loud, but it was deliberate. the sound of weight shifting on wood. I held my breath and stared into the darkness. At first, I thought I was imagining it. My eyes strained to make sense of the shadows. Then I saw movement, a darker shape against the darkness, standing in the doorway of the kitchen. Someone was there. "Hello," I whispered, expecting one of my family members to answer. No one did. The figure didn't move. I sat up further, my pulse pounding in my ears. The silhouette was unmistakably human. Too tall, too solid to be a trick of the light. I tried again, louder this time. "Is someone there?" The figure shifted. It turned and moved toward the back of the house. I heard footsteps, slow but steady, and then the unmistakable sound of the back door opening and closing. I screamed. I shouted for my parents, for my brother, for anyone. Lights flicked on upstairs as doors opened, and confused voices filled the house. Everyone rushed into the living room, asking what happened, talking over one another. I told them what I saw. At first, they thought I'd been dreaming. But when my dad checked the back door and found it unlocked, the mood changed immediately. Cold air poured into the house. Snow had been disturbed outside. My dad, brother, uncle, and I threw on coats and boots and stepped into the freezing night. The yard was silent, the woods looming just beyond the edge of the property. In the snow, clear as day, were footprints leading away from the house. They led straight toward the trees. None of us followed them. Instead, my mom called the police. We stood there waiting, staring into the woods, every sound making my stomach drop. The idea that someone could be standing out there, watching us, made my skin crawl. The snow reflected just enough light to make the darkness feel endless. When the officers arrived, they followed the footprints as far as they could. Eventually, the trail disappeared among the trees, swallowed by uneven ground and drifting snow. They came back with no answers. Nothing in the house appeared to be stolen. No signs of forced entry were found either. The officers suggested it might have been someone looking for easy Christmas targets, hoping to grab gifts or valuables. Maybe they panicked when they realized people were home. Maybe they'd been watching us for hours. That possibility scared me more than anything else. I slept in my parents' room the rest of that night. The next day passed without incident, but the house never felt the same. Every shadow looked suspicious. Every noise made me jump. When night came again, I dreaded going back to the living room. I didn't sleep much. Even now, years later, I still see that silhouette whenever I wake up in the dark. I still think about the dream and how my mind somehow knew before my eyes did. Someone was in the house, and I was the only one awake to see them.